What's up, people? Happy Thursday. Here we are. I never know where to look on this one because I feel like when you're just talking on FaceTime, you look here, but then when you're talking on, I don't know. I'm going to look back at this tomorrow, then I'll have it all figured out. There's Lucas. There we go. Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I've never done this Instagram live like dual screen before. Interesting.
Really? And here I thought you'd just be like an old hat at it by now.
Mhm. Normally like Zoom or in person or but
Yeah.
we're so far away from each other, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I know. Like I've been thinking about that. Like at some point, will like I kind of move this to doing it in person, but then it kind of limits it. Like my guest next week is this bass player Zach Watson, and he's in Australia. When else would I get
Yeah,
to
how you gonna
introduce
do
somebody
that?
in Australia? That's a little
Yep, this
tough.
is the way.
Yeah, I'm
Cool.
digging it. So thanks for coming to
Yeah, me
hang
too.
out with me.
Yeah, of course. So it's what, 9 o'clock your time then?
Yeah, 9 o'clock.
Cool. Cool.
What time do you usually go to bed there in North Carolina?
We got time. We're good.
Oh
It
man.
depends, but got
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. So, Lucas, thanks for coming to hang out, episode 13. And we got so one of the traditional questions that I started on the first one is what were you doing right before we went live?
I was
What's
texting
happening?
you, figuring out if I should have my phone vertical, horizontal, if I should have headphones or not. I do. So
Nice,
yeah,
matching
so I was
headphones.
just making sure I was, semi prepared and professional.
Yeah, I try to do the same thing. Do you think that that's just, have you always been that way, or do you think that came from like filming or being in a band? What do you think?
Yeah, probably over the years I was unprepared for a lot of things many times. So I was like, I should switch it up and make sure I'm prepared for certain things.
Yeah,
You
I
know.
think that I was just texting with one of my creative partners, Silas, and he was saying that he always appreciates that he can ask me why, and it's like because why is my absolute favorite question. Like that's why I don't mind when the kids do it at all because
Yeah.
it makes me think about it, and then if I don't know, I'll just say I don't know. Let's look it up. We have Google
Yeah.
machines
For
in our
me,
pockets.
yeah, for me, why when you're talking about kids asking why, like sometimes it's a really good why.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, I never really thought about that. That's a place that we can both learn something. But then there's, I've said, don't do this or whatever, and it's why. Why can't I? What's wrong with it? It depends on the why coming from my kid for me.
You got a couple of years on me. Like she's a little bit older than my boys, so I'm sure I'm in for those pretty soon.
Yeah, they stay cute, but they get less cute as they get older.
Don't we all? Like that's just life. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, wait till you're 40, kid.
I got some time.
Yeah, you got a little bit of time. So speaking of which, we met. That would have been in like 2006, 2007 when your band was playing at the bar that I was running. I was booking you guys. How old were you
Yeah,
then?
17
Yeah. See, you were still in high school, right?
for sure. Yeah, we started playing. We started gigging in our sophomore year. Yeah,
That's awesome. I
yeah,
started
definitely
playing the
still
same
around.
age.
And you guys were one of the bars that was cool with letting us in to play,
Hmm.
being under 18. We ran into some clubs sometimes that you had to be 18 to play in.
Hmm.
So but you were one of the cool ones, thankfully.
Well, I mean, it's because literally that was when I started playing when I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. There was just one bar in, do you remember Salty Dog in
In
Newbern?
Newbern.
Yeah. So before it was Salty Dog, when the original owner, Buck, had it, it was Buck's place. And that was the first show well, technically the second show I ever played. The first show was at Pamlico County High School for a
Right
big
on.
theater project. And,
That's crazy you say that. That was how our band formed. Aiden Griffin High School, sophomore year. I was new to the school, uh, transferred out of private school to public, and there was Charger Idol. So like you said, like a theater thing. It was like our version of, uh, you know, a talent show. And got up with Trip and other people that were playing the song that year. I ended up singing it, and we were like, hey, we're decent. What we thought we should be in a band and start playing. So that's crazy you say that. That's how our band started.
That's
Was at
so
a school
wild.
talent show. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's weird how that kind of stuff happens. I had just I started playing snare drum in 8th grade, basically to get out of French class because they were had like a beginner's band thing, and my brother had played in middle school and he didn't like it, and so I switched. The first time I got behind a drum kit, totally fell in love, and so like at 15, we just like started kind of. We had a band. Like I bought a
Mhm.
microphone stand from Radio Shack, and I was like, "That's it, we're a band now."
Yeah. So you have a band, sure.
Yeah, and then it was like the bass player's cousin. He actually had a band. He was in this band called Maniacal State. I don't know if you remember them. They were like such a big deal back in the day, and they were from Pamlico County. And so like we ended up like listening, hearing him practicing, and he like had just like needed a drummer, and I was like, I got you, dude. I don't know how to really be in
Yeah.
a band. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
it's
you figured it out. I haven't, I haven't seen you play in years, but I remember you really throwing down. Super sick.
so
High
did you.
energy.
I like you ripped, dude. Like you had like this great emo vibe going on, and like you had your like the kind of the
Oh
emo
man,
hair happening.
sure
When you
did.
decide to cash that emo hair in and switch it up?
2 years after it became very unpopular.
Why is I like that there was a 2 year unpopular
I didn't
break.
know. I didn't know. I think, and that's what I'm running into now with being early 30s and still wearing, skinny jeans. And apparently that's not cool anymore. That's the new dad kind of attire, according to the Gen Z folks.
Really, it's skinny jeans.
Yeah, yep.
Man, I'm
So
wearing my
now I know how my parents feel like when I was like, oh, that's old man clothes. They just never stopped wearing what they finally came into. So
oh
I get
my
it. I'm
god,
here for it.
dude, you just blew my mind. I didn't even think about it like that. They just kept going, and
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh shit, it's not cool. It's uncool now." What?
Yeah. So what? So
I'm wearing my
that's where
straight
I'm
leg
at.
jeans till I die, man. That's just my
Me
jam.
too. Me
Yeah,
too.
hell yeah. So when did you kind of make the switch? Was it a switch from music to food, or was that always just part of your life?
Um, it became part of my life probably seriously around like the age of 14. I remember having
Mm-hmm.
to get a worker's permit to work in a restaurant. And I think that's like 14, 15 years old. So like the same time I started playing music, really. Um, Music went first for the longest time. And I think as we all kind of grew up and had to make some actual decisions on what we were going to do in or out of the band, um, you know, at the height of it, that was our job. That was our working, our income, and it was working.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we all just kind of wanted more individually, and I don't say that I fell back on cooking. I really think it kind of I saw a pathway that was something. It was an outlet creatively,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a way that I could support myself, my family, um, and I really enjoyed doing it, and I was good at it. Um, so the switch was just kind of natural,
Yep.
from one creative outlet to the next, and it made sense in my life at that time, and it's what I wanted to do. I've gotten a lot better at planning over the years, but back then my plan was just kind of the next day or the next
Right.
week, do what I wanted while I was enjoying it. So I'm thankful it stuck for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, it is a big life shift. And like, I remember going through that. I was probably 25, 26, and it was right around the time that I started working at the bar. And we had been playing full time, like same thing. It was our job. And we kind of got to the point where Wick and I kind of wanted to just focus on making music, and we didn't care about, we were okay with having a different source of income. And that's not what the other two guys wanted to do. And it was like, okay, well, apparently this is where we part ways. And that was a really, really big shift to go
Yeah.
from just the community of having a band when you're just always with 3 or 4 or 5 other people. I mean, that was a big shift in and of itself. But yeah, it's an odd feeling doing the grown up making choices thing. And then I just totally screwed up for a few years as well and made lots of bad choices. One of the good choices was when I got to, book bands and start the open mic and all that stuff. That was a really, really cool time in my life. So it was fun to bring you into that and give you a place that you could go play. That didn't suck because let me tell you, when we were playing at those bars, I don't know if you ever remember, there's outside of Greenville, I can't remember the name of the little town, but you drive through it on 43 and it's just this little blip of it's like a stoplight, but there used to be this bar called BB's that was like in a barn. I'll have to look it up and text it to you. But because I can't think of the name of it.
The closest thing I can think of is not even on 43, so it doesn't even matter, but there's a small town called Scuffleton that we played. And that was just me and Trip doing like solo acoustic shows. That was actually super fun.
I'm telling you, there's so much good stuff out that way.
Yeah.
I would pull up my phone, but we're talking on it. I'll text it to you, but it's like in between Vanceboro and Greenville. And yeah. But anyway, it was just
I know that stretch of road, but I don't know where that bar could be. I'm not familiar with it.
There's like an elementary school there, and you literally turn at the only stoplight. But if it wasn't for places like that, we wouldn't have had anywhere to play. So it was nice to have a place with a stage and lights, and you got paid, and you had pizza, and we had good sound. It was fun to
It's got to be the elementary school's got to be Chicago. 43
yes. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, still don't know that bar. Do you turn left or right at that light?
If you're coming from Greenville, you'd turn left. It's probably not even there because it was basically like a barn, but it was a bar. There's no way it's still there. This is in 1997.
Oh yeah.
And I can't imagine BB stuck around. If it did, I can't imagine it would have made it through a pandemic. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
You never know. It's going to be a bunch of good old boys that are just hanging out and drinking. So who knows?
Yeah, maybe so. That's cool. I always like to learn little pieces I don't know about where I'm from. So I appreciate
that. Right. I never knew about that place out by you either that you and Trip were playing at. What are some of the tiniest little shows you played in your heyday?
We played this place in Charleston. I don't remember the name of it. I think it was over the bridge on Mount Pleasant side. Mm-hmm. And super, super small, but we were just stoked to be playing in Charleston. It was a bigger city than where we had come from, and played around Raleigh, Wilmington, the main kind of band circuits back then. But Charleston was cool. That was a small one. Man, we played so many places. It's hard to remember. It's easier to remember the bigger venues, obviously.
Oh yeah, because they're exciting.
Yeah, a bunch of hole in the wall places, but some of those were the best. Oh, there was a place on the way to the beach, I think in Havelock, called Sharky's.
Oh my God, I loved playing Sharky's. Yeah.
And we showed up. I don't know. We played there once or twice, but we showed up, I think, on the way to another show. We were hitting a show on the way to our main one.
Uh-huh.
And we pulled up, and it was just I don't know, you could hear crickets or a pin drop because I guess we weren't what they were used to seeing come through the door, I think. Mm-hmm. I think they were used to classic rock bands and just kind of thrashy type stuff. And then I was well, we gotta play. So we played, and they loved us. They even said, we don't see bands like y'all come through very often. But y'all are good or whatever. We had a great time there. Yeah, super small venue, really awkward when we first got there. But loved it.
That's so funny. And I feel like that's one of the things that's really dope about you opening the restaurant in Greenville is because, I remember being a kid and when we would go to the mall, back when it was Record Bar and that's where you would go to buy tickets to shows and just seeing the show flyer for the Attic and the Attic was just the most mystical venue in the world and going to see shows there and that was always the place that I wanted to play. So what was Well, what drove you to want to open a place in downtown Greenville, North Carolina?
Well, I'm from here. I was born in Raleigh, but I grew up here. Moved back to Raleigh around the age of 20, 21, and I don't know. It's just we were kind of touching on this on the phone the other day, me and you. It's I've always called Greenville a black hole. Once you're here, you kind of get sucked in, and people that don't live here don't understand, or at least back then, didn't
Hmm.
understand. What is it about Greenville? Why can't people? Why do they go there and all that? But over the years, we've seen Greenville become an area that people are moving to specifically to open small businesses. We were number one across the nation in 2020 of places to move to for small businesses. And obviously, I know it's crazy, but we were here, we were back from Raleigh before that list even came out, but you can see the growth. And I think we saw it a few years ago when we were living in Raleigh. When I say we, I mean me and my wife, Brittany, our daughter Paisley too. Um, I think we just saw it and didn't want to miss that boat.
Hmm.
My wife's an interior designer, so there was opportunity for that type of business to flourish in an area that didn't have a lot of them at the time. We were from here, we were comfortable, we knew a lot of people here, and just wanted to support, kind of where we were from, where we grew up,
Hmm.
um, and open our businesses there, because people tend to preach, eat local, buy local, open businesses local. I'm not saying a lot of people don't do it, but I'm
Hmm.
one of those people that I'm big on that. So
Yeah.
if I have the opportunity and the platform to open something and to grow something, I'm definitely going to do it where I grew up. So
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. It organically kind of happened.
Hmm.
Um, we love it here. We're growing every day. It's becoming a great city for sure.
Yeah, even just going back to New Bern, the times because I've been gone for 10 years and going
Mm-hmm.
back now and it's just changed so much. It's like got some like it's got a couple of real bars, it's got a couple things that are actually happening there and it's so
Yeah.
nice that like as our generation is becoming the adults and the parents and the business owners to see that kind of coming back. I think that's really really dope. And you've actually worked with one of the people who in Eastern North Carolina was one of the first people that kind of led the charge on that. How do you think Vivian Howard's like influence on that kind of mentality rubbed off on you over the years?
Yeah, I think Vivian's great. I really like her story a lot, and I think with what I do, cooking and creating visions for restaurants and trying to tell stories, that's exactly what it is. That's what we're kind of in the business of, you know, is telling stories and sharing them, experiences, and it's just super important. And her story, in short, she moved to New York to work. She was doing food writing and stuff like that. Um, and then she wanted to do what she was writing about,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up doing a lot of staging in New York and ended up wanting to open a restaurant. And the story that I know, and I think, she said publicly, a lot of people know, is that um, she was speaking with her parents about it and said, I want to open a restaurant. And they said, well, we'll help you do that, but there's a stipulation, and that is that you have
Mm-hmm.
to do it here. So
Yeah.
I think, had I been hit with that, and I guess she opened in 2006, if I were in that situation in 2006, it would have been tough to
Right.
want to move from New York to open a restaurant in Lenore County. Um, so I just think the drive behind that and the passion she had to make that work. That was her dream, and she did it, and it's been wildly successful, obviously. So
Yeah.
what I've learned from that is to know what you believe in, to know what you are, to know what you're not, and
Mm-hmm.
and to play with those strengths, and to hire incredible crews around you that are able to support that and see the vision. And you can be and do anything you want to. I tell my daughter that often. You can be anything you
Mm-hmm.
want to be, do anything you want to do. It's just how
Yeah.
do we get there? How do we find the vision and focus on it and nail it? You
And I
know?
think you're doing such a great job at that. Like as you're opening native, like you have just such a clear picture, you're telling such a clear story of what it is. And when you were telling me the other day about the building and how you're like, no, this is the one I want. It's 100 years old. It's got like 16-foot tin ceilings. Like, that is a story. And I think that that's what great chefs and great restaurateurs do, is they tell you a story, because whether it's food or music, you have to have an emotional connection, and the emotional connection carries everything else. Not to say that the rest of it can be crap. If it tell a good story, it can be crappy. I don't mean that, but like, yeah, it's so important to tell that story, because that's where you get people in the heart. And I think that that's something that, just from what I've seen, I haven't had the delight of coming down. I'll be down in October though, but like, I can just see it. I can see it all over everything that you've been doing, even like going back a couple of years, just looking at your feed of all the photos, you can just see the composition on the plate of what you're doing. And I love that. That's just such a beautiful art to me.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, people can see when you're genuine and when your heart's in something, and they can definitely see when it's not. And that's something that I think we all have to like learn and grow into. It's something I've definitely had to learn and grow into, that, like I said earlier, you know what you are and you know what you're not, and you focus on the things that you are. And, if you want to become the things that you're not, then obviously you focus on those. But I just think that being genuine in what we're trying to open here, and the story that we're trying to tell, and that story is doing modern, progressive recreations of nostalgic diner food in a fine dining setting, and just kind of telling the story of how our food's evolved over the years, and how the scenes have been built in America through diner food.
Yeah. And you're also doing very local cuisine. You're working with a lot of local suppliers, because I feel like you're really practicing what you preach.
Yeah, and I think, that was a really big wave and kind of like a hot topic, that started quite a few years ago, probably 10 years ago now. Use your local farmers, your local produce, farm to table.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now it's just a general practice, with chefs who are taking themselves seriously and trying to generate revenue in not only their restaurant, but in their local economy. Yeah, the whole farm to table thing, I think that's just a given for us. We're gonna, as long as that's the best product, I think that to produce the best food, you have to start with the best ingredients. And, we're fortunate here in North Carolina that a lot of our local farmers and purveyors, they do supply the best ingredient. And I think we have at least the purveyors I work with, actually I can see on this feed, one of them's watching right now, so this is good. You know, we have the luxury that they do supply the best ingredients a lot of the times, but we also have a relationship and understanding where if it's not the best product, how do we work to make it better? How can we age this beef better, or how can we find a better cut of fish for this particular dish? But yeah, starting with the best ingredients is going to produce the best food for sure.
Yeah, I think it's
purveyors that understand that.
Right. And I think that having, even what you said about building a great team around you, you have to know what you're not good at, when you're working with people directly within your own restaurant. And sometimes it's something that's worth going and learning to do. And sometimes it's just like, no, this isn't my wheelhouse. But it's your wheelhouse. And it's the same thing with music. And I think that what you're saying about having the purveyors and creating those relationships, because it builds everybody up, but also saying it's not the best product, how can we make it better? That kind of collaboration, it just makes everyone more elevated. And I think that to me is just such a sign of humility, talent, and openness. And I think that is such a powerful thing to bring into your art. And like you said, it's what it translates. People can see that, people can feel it, and it's just literally making everyone better. And I think that's one of the reasons areas like Eastern North Carolina are starting to come up, because people are just taking care of each other. And I think that's one of the things that's been really cool with what you're doing. And it's I think really helped people get through a difficult time in this last year, because that was one of the things that you were telling me the other day, is that a lot of the restaurants around by you are doing better now than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
or like
Yep.
pre-COVID?
Yeah,
What
and
do
I
you
mean,
think has been some of the changes?
I think that people have always, I mean, the biggest change I think we've seen, not just here, but nationwide, is how are people eating, not in restaurants, but from restaurants over the past
Mm.
year, and that's been through takeout and delivery.
Hmm.
That's just hands down been the biggest, way to keep revenue up. Um, and, I just think that there's other, well, I don't want to say that. People have always had it and they've always used it, and it
Hmm.
being delivery and takeout, but they've never had to have to depend on it
Hmm.
to keep their businesses, to keep their doors open. So I think maximizing that outlet of revenue has been key in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing that I thought was really cool, there's one of my favorite breakfast spots here is called the Scullery.
Hmm.
And something really cool that they did early on was they opened their restaurant as a grocery store. And then
Yeah.
eventually we saw that, nationwide people doing that. But the Scullery is the first restaurant I saw do it.
Hmm.
And I kicked that idea around with my wife. And I was like, if Native had been open, thank God we weren't when all this happened. I'm very fortunate that we hadn't opened, and we could have opened that year, but decided to wait until everything kind of calmed down. Um, but the Scullery was the first restaurant I saw do that, and I think that's really been the key factor in keeping places open is these owners and chefs have been, so keen on how do we continue to operate when we're being told we can't really operate. And
Hmm.
that's opening as a grocery store. And that, what does that do? That keeps you ordering product. So you're
Hmm.
also supporting your purveyors that we've built these relationships with in the first place. So how can we keep our doors open and also support the people that we've been working with for however long? Well, we can be a grocery store, we can do takeout, we can do delivery,
Hmm.
um, and then as safely as possible, opening to the maximum capacity that you're able to
Hmm.
7 days a week, you know.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah. I'd
think
have
people
to
have just
say,
had to depend on things that they normally haven't had to depend on.
I think that a lot of the places that are really thriving, and or in Chicago, it's like a lot of restaurants have said that it hasn't been enough, and I wonder if it attributes to just overhead costs or what. But I love all of the people that have shifted gears and come up with those things. We're big fans of there's a restaurant here called Big Jones. Paul Fenbacker. I know I'm
Mm-hmm.
screwing his name up, but that was one of the things they started doing was like their pantry items and stuff like that. And he does a lot of really great Southern cuisine. We've got his cookbook, and in it he includes stuff that he like has on his menu. And man, his condiments, he does like a lot of like pickled stuff. He has like some really great piccalilli and chow
Right.
chow, and we have like pickled
Okay.
peaches in the cabinet and hot sauce. Dude, his
Yeah.
like his peach hot sauce,
The
it's
jam.
ridiculous. I'll send you a bottle. It's so good.
Yeah.
But I think that that's
Cool.
so dope. And there's a little bar down the road from us that has just killer food. And their sauces are just so on point. And I'm like, I ended up emailing and I'm just like, dude, you got to start bottling this. Like, here's some restaurants that are doing it. There's
Right.
there's a Japanese restaurant that we always get their $7 bottle of ginger dressing whenever we order sushi because it is the bomb ginger dressing. Like, you got to start doing that. And like, I think that's where it's allowing us to connect with the restaurants that we love in a different way. I love having Chef Paul's piccalilli on
Sure.
eggs or whatever, it's just so
Yeah.
good. And I think that that's really been a cool innovation. And same thing with just the curbside. Like, I personally love that. I wouldn't have minded stepping outside when I was hosting to like run some food
Sure.
out. Maybe not everybody's
Yeah.
bag. It's probably not very fun in the rain, but
Yeah.
yeah, man. Like, so what do you think?
Yeah.
What is something you would like to see carried forward that you think was a really good innovation that you want to continue?
I think just, I mean, I'm pretty business minded, so I, what I love about everything you just said and what we kind of touched on was that people had to adapt very quickly. And in those difficult times when you're having to adapt so quickly, it really shows how powerful and how smart humans are, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I love that. Like, I love
Yeah.
that we're able to innovate so quickly. And I think that's why we are where we are in general, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in the world today. But as far as things like that go, but I would just like to see that whole mindset. You know, you're asking what would I like to see continue? Just that mindset of like, okay, what can we innovate? What can we create? What can we make better? Not because we're in a pandemic or not because we have to rely on something we've never had to, but just because we want to use our brain power. Like we want to
Yeah.
see how far we can push any envelope or how, you know, how far how good we can make something, how much we can change something from its original form. And I'm speaking on food right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just that whole mindset of like how we can continue to push something further and make it better. You know,
Are you into any like gastronomy kind of stuff? Just speaking to pushing ingredients further, like is that are you keep it a little bit more natural?
yeah, I mean, it's cool. I definitely
Just
think
curious.
I've dabbled in it, like spirification and stuff like that. But I think, and we talked about this on another podcast not too long ago. Like, it's kind of a fad, in my opinion,
Right.
unless you're like Grant Achatz in Chicago, where you are. Like, unless you're that guy,
Yeah.
like that's probably going to go away for most people. That's what
Yeah.
he does. Like, he's kind of the father of that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
one of few really
Yeah.
that is doing that kind of food on that level. Yeah, it's cool. You know, if given the chance to go to Alinea, obviously I'm going to go
Yeah.
and see what that's like in person. But and that's someone that I look up to. You know, I read his cookbooks, I watch his video. You know, he's an incredible chef.
So
Yeah, it's really
inspiring.
cool stuff. Yeah, it's and you know he overcame cancer and he couldn't taste
Mm-hmm.
his own food for years and it's wild. He's got a crazy story and that's it all goes back to the
Mm-hmm.
story. I'm telling you, you know, you learn where people were from, what they've been through, and how they're progressing. You know, that's the fruit of the whole thing.
A
Um,
100%. That's
but yeah,
literally why I started this show, is because that's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in
yeah,
knowing about people. Is like, well, here's something I haven't heard before, you know?
right. Yeah, I love it. I love the name of the show. Um, it's a really cool idea. And yeah,
Well,
I
you were,
figured you asked me, you're like, send me three pictures and your name and write your name on a piece of paper. And I'm like, I'm pretty high anxiety most of the time, right? So I'm like, like, do I write Luke? Do I write Lucas? Like, she knows me as Lucas, but people call me Luke after, you know. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to write whatever comes out. So I just wrote my name. And I was like, I bet this is going to go like on a tag. And sure enough,
yeah.
I was like, that's awesome. I love that. Cool.
Thanks, man. I can't. So,
Yeah.
like, on the original sketch that I did for the logo, I had just like found like a handwriting font to write human, and I was like, no, it needs to be like my writing. I think that would be cooler. And I don't even want to tell you how many times I wrote the word human before I got that one. And I just found the original logo the other day. I was like, oh yeah, that looks dumb. This is way cooler. And then a couple, like, I don't know, about a month or so ago, I was trying to finally update my website. And I had like, I was gonna, okay, now time to like write my name. So I wrote Sarah Natchweed, Sarah Natchweed. It was like all over a sheet of paper. And my wife comes down and she's like, what are you, a teenager, like practicing to get married and like writing your name? I was
I
like,
love
no, no,
Sarah. Sarah.
I
Yeah, yeah,
got married and now I need to learn how to write my name again. Like that's
yeah,
actually what happened. If I was Sarah Saito, it'd be no problem. But Sarah Natchweed is like, how do I want
yeah.
my end to look? You know, you're making a logo for God's sakes.
Right.
So I'm glad
Yeah,
other
when
people
you're
obsess over writing their name.
yeah, when your name, you know, first changed, I saw on like Facebook or something. I was like, what is that? Like, how do you say that? Because I always thought your name was so cool because like growing up I watched CSI and there was a
Uh,
Sarah Sato on that show. So every
yeah.
time like I would see her say your name, I'm like, oh, that reminds me of that. And then your name changed, and I'm like, I don't even know how to say that name.
Oh man,
That's a
that was
weird
like a
one.
big thing. That was like this big conversation because originally when Tanya and I were getting married, we were going to be the Cytos. That was the plan all along. I was like, nope, I'm established. I'm a musician. Um, like, no, we're going to be the Cytos. And I was at a rehearsal with my buddy Aaron Wilhoft. It was the first time I'm like playing with this guy right when we had met. And I'm at the rehearsal space, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get a text from Tanya that says, what do you think about changing your name to Natreed? And I was like, well, there aren't many Cytos left in the world. And she's like, my dad is literally the last natch we'd like. And her dad and I are super close. So as soon as she said that, I was like, done. You win.
Yeah.
And it turned out that we had 2 boys, and now there's 2 more little natchweed boys. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
so
great.
you can carry the name on. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think that's reason enough to make the switch for sure.
Yeah. And like, it's definitely a name that like Saito got messed up enough. And but yeah, people just look at Natchery and go, I'm not even gonna try. And I only ever had one person when I was working at Chicago Music Exchange after I'd gotten married. I only ever had one customer or like vendor person ever just get it right. And I was like, wow, are you Polish or Ukrainian or something? They were like, oh yeah, my family's all Polish. So they just knew how to pronounce the CZ. Because I didn't know. She told me natural weed was the way to remember.
I saw that in the chat. Yeah, I saw that in the chat. I guess that's her.
Yeah, that's her. That's Mrs. Natchweed.
Yeah, well, that's probably how I remember how to say it from now on. Because you said it on the phone the other day, and I'm like, I'm gonna remember that, and I forgot it. Within a few hours.
Yeah, just think natural weed. It worked for me when we were dating. Yeah.
Perfect.
Now all I want to talk about is weed because that's one of my other favorite subjects. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But well, one of the things that I thought that it was really interesting, we are completely switching gears now, just warning everyone. But one of the things I thought was really interesting as we're talking about like just mindset changes and whatnot, you were saying that one of the things that you've talked about a lot recently in your industry is just dealing with the inequalities and like diversity in the restaurant industry. And it really got me thinking because one of the things that, like, as we were talking about when you were filming A Chef's Life and you were on camera all the time, it's like you got to know the camera crew, so you're just kind of like talking shit to each other. It's like, hey, get the hell out of the way, because like that's how people talk in restaurants. Like I've worked in the restaurant industry. It's the same way in music. And I feel like as we're kind of evolving as a society, we're going like, maybe we shouldn't always say a lot of the things that we do, because even though I'm a woman in the industry, like I've been doing this my entire adult life. And so I got kind of numb to a lot of that stuff, a lot of the shit talking, a lot of the misogyny. Like I am guilty of it as well and just totally blind to it because it was just something I was used to. So how do you think now as you're building your team, how do you think your awareness is different, especially as the father of a girl? And how do you think you're going to be more aware of that as you move forward building your team?
Yeah, I mean, I just think like it's a respect thing, and I'm super guilty of it too. I think a lot of people are, but it's something I'm still learning to like to note. I don't want to say learning to notice, but like there's some things that are obviously offensive, but then there's things that like you don't think of them being, and you're used to viewing certain things a certain way. So I'm just trying to make sure that like myself and my team, that we're just conscious of everyone and what we're saying, what we're doing, how we're acting, because like you said earlier, you got used to a lot of it. Well, you shouldn't have to get used to a lot of it. You shouldn't have to get used to it. I don't know. I just think we're in an interesting time where like we just have to be aware of how people are navigating through the industry, through life in general, because certain ways that you can make people feel can make them, do other harmful things. Like we're experiencing a ton of like mental illness in our industry also,
Right.
So it's like, and everybody always says, oh, I should have checked on this person. I should have asked this or that, or I should have noticed, and I should have called them or whatever. But like, it's not just that. You got to get better at noticing it. Just whether it's, racial inequality or sexual abuse in restaurants or mental illness, like just being cognizant and being aware of yourself, clear-minded, so you can recognize things like that, building your team around things like that, and creating a culture that doesn't support the negative parts of that. I mean, if you're building the correct culture, everything's going to fall into place. And I think it just comes down to being a decent human. You know, I mean, if you're being a decent human, you're likely going to treat people decent. You know, so just getting back to like, I don't want to use the word like chivalry, but like getting back to like just being respectful. I think that, I don't know, I could go down so many different pathways with this, but like you mentioned my daughter earlier. So it's like, if I let her watch certain things on YouTube or listen to certain music, like she's young and she's impressionable, and I can't steer everything away from her, and she needs to get, I don't want to say beat up a little bit, but like she needs to see real stuff. You know, it's 7, but at the same time, you know, I don't know. I think there's a balance. Like I said, there's so many avenues to take, but like there's a balance of, you know, being beat up enough and then being like sheltered enough, you know. So like with her, we just kind of, we watch what she's watching. We obviously pay attention, and like we also think if we raise her the right way, she's going to make the right decisions and she's going to be a decent human the older she gets. So I don't know, just trying to like, you know, be decent and learn, you know, what other people, what's going on with them, building the correct culture. Yeah.
I think exactly what you just said, though, is it's my philosophy in parenting and also in management and just being part of a team and being a decent human is you have to be aware. And that is the biggest part of that with other people is just listening. And when and believing them when they say something, you know, and just if they say, hey, this bothered me, saying, even if you didn't mean to, like, okay, like that's a real feeling. And I think that like that 100% translates into parenting. And just the other big part for me, and I think that it's something that it's very important to me. I'm always a person that's willing to admit if I was wrong. I don't always do it right away. My wife will attest. Sometimes I'm going to really fight for what I was thinking and saying because no one is ever not no one. We're often not trying to be a jackass when we say a lot of things, but you know, that doesn't mean you weren't, and just admitting you were wrong. And I think that that's a big thing is you like, especially with kids, they have to fail. And it's really hard, you know, like whether it's watching your kid, because our one son just turned 2, watching them fall down because they're still a little clumsy climbing up on stuff. And like, whether it's that or now, you know, at 7 years old, that she's doing all kinds of stuff. Because you were saying that, like, she's getting into acting and she's like kind of showing an interest in that. And I think that, you know, just from your own creative expressions in music and food, like there's going to be times you're not going to get the audition. Someone else is going to get something that you rocked at. And I think just understanding that, like, no, you're not always going to get the part. I think that that's like such a valuable thing, kind of the getting beat up thing, you know?
Right. Yeah. Life lesson.
Yeah. You got to have them. You got to have them. Sure. What do you think has been like kind of the guiding force with you for some of the failures that you've had as you've kind of pulled yourself out of them?
Like recently, like
sure,
as an adult, I don't know. I guess just trying to set an example, and just be better, whether it's at cooking or at being a dad, being a better husband, you know. I think that's the real driving force, at least today, you know, for me, in this part of my life. And you know, early on, I struggled to find what it was that was a purpose or what drove me to do certain things. And you know, I was cloudy, I was confused, I was, you know, I could have taken any avenue, but I think once I found consistency, and this is kind of going back to cooking, you know, it's really what drew me to cooking was the consistency of it, because I grew up really inconsistently. But that was really what the drive was as far as my career. And then, you know, me and Britt having Paisley and just my life's not the only one I'm responsible for, you know.
That's a big change. Like, if you can lean into that, then you're going to do parenting way better.
Right. Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. This just died, so hopefully it's still picking. Okay. My
Mine
headphones just.
totally, mine totally died at the beginning of the episode last week. I didn't realize because you have to charge the little charger. I
Yeah,
hadn't checked it, and like I was
that's what
maybe like 3 minutes in, it was like bing bong. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
shit.
exactly
So
right. I had them in here, but I guess the box wasn't charged. So
yeah. Well, there we
sorry.
go. There's one to add to the list of things to remember to do better. But
Right.
yeah, like I'm curious about that too. Like as a chef, like we're it is kind of interesting where like you are cooking the same set of food all the time. So now that you're the one designing that menu, how do you think that influences your decisions of what to put on there? Where like you're going to be cooking the same thing all the time. Like how do you think that that influences you to make it something that you're going to enjoy cooking 5, 6, 7 nights a week?
Yeah, I think like the way we run our menus, and this even goes back to before Chef and the Farmer, because I wrote those menus, and then like before I moved back here from Raleigh, I was writing menus in Raleigh for various restaurants. But like I think more than because my food, it changes a lot. It
Mm-hmm.
changes even if we don't change every ingredient. Like if we're working with farmers and they're out of this particular vegetable or they didn't pick it that week, but they did pick this vegetable, I'm like, okay, well, how can we wedge this into the spot that it needs to be in? So like my ingredients change a lot. My dishes change pretty often. Um, so I really more so focus on like the techniques. Like as long as the techniques remain interesting, um, I remain interested, and I think the cooks do too. So, I'm working on an onion dish that it's a spring onion. So they're really big, bold onions, um, where they're cooked, two different ways. First, they're blanched in various liquids, and then smoked. After that, finished with garnishes. So that's a cool technique to me. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy French cooking. So like even old techniques like braising, and stuff like that. As long as the technique's interesting, I stay pretty interested, and just figuring out how many ingredients I can put through this specific type of technique. And again, going back to what we
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, like how can we do it better the next time? Or if smoke didn't work, what does work? If searing it didn't work, what does work? Um, and not to like say it wasn't good, but it didn't surprise me. It was nothing I hadn't had or hadn't done.
Mm-hmm.
How can we do it a little bit different? And that could be just minor changes. It could be brining a protein in something that you normally wouldn't. It doesn't have to. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to do it completely different every time. It's just as long
Right.
as we're learning something, I think that's valuable.
Mm-hmm. That's really fun. I definitely have like the same approach with music. My one band, Baby Money, is releasing a song tomorrow. We like set a project for ourselves, Pamela, Maurer, and I, where we decided we were gonna record a song, film a music video, and have it all done in a month, and so we could release it on Bandcamp Friday for May. And today we finished up all the music. She's finishing the video tonight, and that was something that was really fun. Was just applying different things that we hadn't before.
Mhm.
um, she's in a relationship with a guy that's a really good cello player. So as
Mhm.
we were kind of working through the mix, the one night the two of them were listening to me, he's like, "Hey, I think I want to put some cello in this," and she's like, "Tell me more." So
Yeah.
like then she's like gives it to me the other day, and it's like, okay, just kind of think kind of an Eleanor Rigby, and I was like, okay, this is my best. Baby Buddy meets Eleanor Rigby, and like it was just so fun to take something that like normally that would have been a guitar doing that part, but
Right.
instead it's like this very orchestral thing. So yeah, it's like it's super fun for me.
Yeah.
What are
That's
some of
exactly
your
what I
favorite?
mean.
Yeah, I love it so much, and even just like applying the guitar so differently. So what's some of the other techniques that you're really into right now? Are you a big smoker?
Um, I like it, but I'm not like, I'm not like a barbecue guy. I mean, I eat
Right.
a ton of barbecue. It's like one of my favorite things, but it's not like what I do. So kind of like what we were saying earlier, like know what you are, know what you're not. It's not that I'm not that, but it's not what I focus on. I'm really into like finding different ways to preserve foods.
Mm.
Something I want to do at some point. I don't know if I'm in the right region for it. I'm sure it can be done. but still something I'm researching, is preserving food underground without refrigeration, fermenting it. Yeah, really into like fermentation, preservation, how we can, stretch the life of different foods. We're going to be doing aged beef at the restaurant when we open, as much as 130 days aged, depending on the cut. So just like exploring like really funky kind of textures and flavors like that. It's definitely like an esoteric type thing for a lot of people, something that they don't venture out and try too often. But if we can be the establishment and the chefs that, allow people to try that if they want to, I'm good with that, because that means that they're learning something, they're doing something they haven't done, and they decided to do that in my restaurant on that night when they could have been literally anywhere in the world. They were with us trying something they hadn't before. So that's kind of one of my goals here in Greenville.
Dude, you just like literally gave me like head to toe goosebumps. Like that's what's up right there.
Yeah,
because it's exactly that. You're allowing these people to have the experience, and like it's just the whole way that the provider and the customer work, and like that's really when the synergy happens. And I think that's the best kind of food. I think aging is something that's really interesting. I just tried aging for like a week. We always did a standing rib roast growing up. That was like the big Christmas dinner that my grandma used to do, my mom used to do. So this year was the first time that we like hosted Christmas, because normally we would be going off to the big Ukrainian Christmas Eve and all of this stuff, and with Tanya's family, and we didn't obviously do any of that this year. So it was super exciting for me to get to do it, and I just did like a regular week-long, wrap it up in the cheesecloth in the fridge, aging on that roast. It was dumb. It's dumb how much 7 days
it changes so
sitting
much.
there. Oh my God. When like Tanya's mom was eating it and it was just like, this is the best roast I've ever had. I was like, I win. I agree. I feel the same way. Like there was just something that happened in the fat too. Like, oh my God. Like, and I think that one of the things that, I don't know if it's everywhere, like, because now I feel so spoiled living in such a foodie city here in Chicago. But like, I know that like that was why what Vivian did was crazy. Cause like for people that don't know Kinston, North Carolina, like Kinston is a tiny little country farming town, like lots of tobacco farms around there and lots of corn and like just farmers everywhere. And the idea that like that was there, like in 2006, like makes no sense, because people weren't ready for that in their palate. Cause what do we eat? We eat seafood and we eat barbecue and like just
meat and
plain
potatoes.
old, very meat and potatoes kind of thing. And like, I think that's super dope that you're going to be bringing like fermented stuff, because of all the people that I know in still in Eastern North Carolina, nobody's doing that. Like that's starting to be a thing here. I'm gonna send you some love from Big Jones. Like,
that'd be awesome.
You gotta try this pickle lily, man. Like I think because it's a lot of the canned stuff, and I think that's because that's what I love about what you're doing with that, is the idea of extending the ingredient, because that's traditionally how it was done. You ate all of the stuff when it came out of the ground, but then you had so much of it, you had to put it away. And I love that you're bringing that into a restaurant.
Right. Yeah. And that's something I love about it too, is I use this example pretty often when this topic comes up, but like green tomatoes, a lot of people think that you are supposed to eat green tomatoes before they turn red, which is early on in its season. They're like, oh, let me pick some green ones so I can have fried green tomatoes. That's completely wrong. That's not what you're supposed to do. You get through the season, and then when the weather isn't hot enough to turn your tomatoes red and they stay green, then you eat green tomatoes. So you don't eat them at the beginning of the season. You're wasting tomatoes at that point. You eat as many red as you can, and when the weather isn't right, that's when you do fried green tomatoes or tomato chow chow or piccalilli, like you were talking about. And that's, again, what we're trying to do, like just educate people on really simple things like that.
Dude, you just blew my mind. Like I never knew that. And like now
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna grow some damn tomatoes. I've got this one spot like in our yard right alongside the house where it used to have like daffodils, but now it's all just this one little bare patch. I'm like, man, that sure does get a lot of sun. Do you garden at all? Or do you
Yeah,
not have
we
time
have
for that?
three beds. We have three beds in the backyard. I haven't started anything this year. I don't know. Like we're stupid busy, like
Fair.
individually and as opening a restaurant together. And I just kind of spaced on it. Like I should have planted things already. There's some things I can still plant, like mid to
Hmm.
late season. But yeah, last year we did okra, tomatoes, watermelons, carrots, cucumbers, squash, zucchini. That might be about it.
That's a pretty good spread for 3 beds.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like it's rewarding to see, you know. I mean, that's why like yeah, I'm more of like a winter guy than a
Yeah.
summer guy, but so I don't love being outside like all day every day, kind of like Brittany does during the summer. Like she could be
Hmm.
outside, you know, the whole summer if she could, but like it's rewarding to see, like to see it come up and then to cook with it, to kind of teach Paisley about it because she's the one that's out there, you know, picking them off the vine
Hmm.
and yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it.
That was like such a joy for me growing up because my dad had a big vegetable garden at our house growing up. And he would do it like every year he'd kind of do something a little different. Like after our swing set had fallen apart, like, and he finally took it down because we were just too big for it. He like took the uprights from the monkey bars and like we got like went and cut down a bunch of bamboo and like
Hmm.
strung that up and that was like the beans and he had them going all up and down with the strings and man that was the
That's
coolest.
cool.
I like so this is some
That's cool.
country shit right here is like I
Yeah.
remember having he would grow radishes and green peppers and I'd pick a green bell pepper and I'd hollow it out and I'd fill it up with water from the hose and I'd wash off my radishes and I would walk around eating my radishes, drinking my water out of my
That's
bell
crazy.
pepper cup.
That's
Yeah.
cool. I like that.
So I
That's
think
awesome.
like that's got to be so fun to like be passing on to your daughter because especially if she's
Yeah.
into it. Like our older son Tristan's totally into that kind of stuff and I'm looking forward to getting him going with some veggies and stuff out in the yard this year.
Yeah, she's big on it for sure. For sure. Was the water you were putting in those green peppers, was it hose water?
Oh yeah, of course we drank out of the hose
Okay.
back then.
Yeah, it has a specific taste to it. That's why I asked.
It
But you
does.
can
It's a very
definitely tell
specific
hose water.
taste.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's really good. It's I mean, it's probably not great for you, but like that taste just makes me think of being a kid, like drinking out of the
Yeah,
hose. Very
it's a
specific.
very specific. Yeah, it's a specific because it's like because the red garden hoses don't taste the same. It's
The
got to
green
be
one.
that green like vinyl. Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah.
I know.
It's probably the vinyl that we're tasting, honestly.
It's all the
Mm.
chemicals and poison.
Vinyl. Yeah.
Carcinogens. So how is it working now? Feel free to not answer this, but how is it working with your wife? Is she doing all the designing for the restaurant as far as
Yeah.
interior?
So yeah, we decided a long time ago, like early on, that we wouldn't work together unless it was opening a business together. And we
Smart.
stayed true to that. I think we worked in one restaurant together very briefly right before we moved to Raleigh, and not because like it was a restaurant I necessarily wanted to be in, but I was like, let me like do something for the next 6 months while we figure out our move. And it was the restaurant that she was bartending at. So we briefly worked together like really early on, and then said that we wouldn't unless we were opening something together, and stayed really true to that. But yeah, she's incredible. Like she's really good at her job. It's not like a biased statement at all. You know, even if we weren't married, like I think she's just really talented and really good at what she does. And yeah, she's designing the restaurant. It's mid-century modern, which is kind of like her forte and what she focuses on. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
incredible.
That's my jam.
Um, yeah, and you being in Chicago, one of her favorite architects is uh, Frank Lloyd Wright,
I love
which has
him.
done a ton of stuff in Chicago.
Yeah, it's crazy
Um,
to drive around and see him because I've been in love with him since what's that one house called the waterfall house where it's like he's got the creek like little creek that goes
yeah,
through the house. I think it's in
yeah,
Pennsylvania. I'm like
hmm
so gaga over that, so I'm so familiar with his style and like driving
yeah,
by a Frank Lloyd Wright and you can just see it like you recognize it immediately. So
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
got to be sexy, like mid-century modern in that old building. Like it's kind of like a cool time capsule happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of get like, not worried, but like, I don't know. I always feel like I have to explain myself when I say it's a diner because
Hmm.
people, even me, like when I hear diner, I think like shiny metal diner. It's
Yeah.
not that at all. The building is brick and glass, and the only shiny equipment in it is the kitchen equipment. Everything
Hmm.
else is pretty neutral and not really muted, but just kind of like neutrals, greens, rust colors, blacks and whites, tans. And 90% of the building is windows, or at least the outside is like all windows. So a lot of natural light. She played off really well with that. Um, yeah, it's a really beautiful space. I'm ready to show it. But yeah, like I said, she's just really good and has an eye,
Hmm.
not just for what we like, but she can have a client that wants something super specific that's not mid-century modern. Most people are calling her and booking her because she's mid-century modern, and that's what
Right.
they're after. But occasionally she'll have a client that's not, and she'll say, look, here's the email I got back from the client, and it's like, this is exactly what I wanted, and blah blah blah. And she just has an eye for interior design in general. Super smart and just really good. So she really put it together really nicely. Really
There's
happy with it.
something really, yeah, there's something really fun about somebody saying, giving you a reference and saying this, like the Eleanor Rigby thing with the cello. It was like, I know this is blasphemous, but like I don't really listen to the Beatles. I just didn't like that was just never my thing. So I had no
Mhm.
frame of reference. So like when I sat to and she's like, "Oh, Eleanor Rigby," I was like, I kind of sort of knew the song because I've heard it, but I didn't
Yeah.
like know it intimately. So it's to me, it's super fun to work off of a reference. What have been some of your favorite like culinary references that you like to get direction on and run with?
What do you mean? Like,
Or that
explain that a little bit more.
well, like maybe like kind of the way I mean it is like maybe like chefs that you've worked under where like you had to do it a very specific way, but you were able to bring your flair to it because you've worked under a pretty awesome group of chefs, like between being employed and then staging and stuff like that. So what was it one of those where you kind of got to have a reference of do it this way, but you were allowed to put your spin on it?
I think I immediately go to like the first time I was allowed to do that, and that was
Hmm.
at Coquette in Raleigh.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a French restaurant. We were kind of not kind of, but my executive chef's name there is Beth Littlejohn, and she's moved on. But um, she had a way of like putting out cooks to become chefs. So like she said, this is how we do things here. This is my way, but like this is your station, and you are responsible. You can do everything that I do within your station. So like writing our parts of the menu and then having them approved by her. Like, hey, I really want to I've conceptualized this dish, and like I worked fish at that
Hmm.
particular restaurant. So I would conceptualize like seafood dishes, and I was able to create those and then take them to her, and she'd be like, I like this, I don't like that, like, and she would push our brains a little bit to like, okay, but if you could create a different texture here, how could you do that? And, not really walk us through it, but make us think through it. And
Yeah.
then, we were creating our parts of the menu, and then we were also like ordering for our stations, inventorying for
Hmm.
our stations. So we were doing executive chef work on a very small level, and she was creating executive chefs, but we were her cooks, so
Wow. Wow.
yeah, like I think my brain goes to that really quickly. Not, I mean, I think that answers your question. It's not like
Oh yeah.
one particular like dish or one
Hmm.
particular way to cook something, but I just think I became really well rounded um, during that year and a half of my life cooking there. And I'm super thankful for her to that because I didn't really realize that's what was happening at the
Hmm.
time. But
Right.
and then as I moved on and took on sous chef roles, executive chef roles, I was like, I know a lot of this because of my year and a half to 2 years at Coquette.
Right.
So
Was that really your first time doing that? That was like literally your first time ever, like writing menus and ordering and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. And so kind of from there, that's when you started doing all the menu planning and for other restaurants. Was it all menu planning for places that you worked at? Or were you ever collaborating?
Until recently. Yeah. So I was, as I became sous chef or CDC or chef de cuisine, executive chef, obviously that responsibility fell to me.
Right.
But yeah, until recently, that was where I was working were the only restaurants where I was creating the menu. Now, within the past 2 years, I've taken on a lot of consulting and helping other restaurants develop their menus and have effective costing and pro formas and stuff like that. And because of those sous chef and executive chef roles, I've been able to help other restaurants do the same thing that may be in between chefs or may not have a chef at all, and just be able to help them there. Yeah.
That's so dope. Like, I'm always just so curious about like how menu writing works too. So like, are you just kind of sitting around vibing over like what they're going for when you're consulting?
Yeah, but they're really, a lot of them are coming to me and my sous chef to like help them find that kind of voice. They've had menus and recipes for years, but maybe they're outplayed, or they consider them boring. Maybe not the patrons so much, but like maybe the owners, or they just want to refresh something and they're coming to us for like ideas. And a lot of the consulting I do, like I'm not just giving away my recipes. Like I don't give away my food, but I look at their concept, what they're doing, and how can we like modernize it, or how can we, it depends what they want to do. Like, do you want a more contemporary version of what you've been doing for however long? Or do you want to like do this in a traditional way? Just like I was talking about my wife earlier, like the client, like I said, she can, most of her clients are coming to her because of what she does, but she'll have a client occasionally that wants something that isn't mid-century modern. So, and she can like zone in on that and give them exactly what they want. So it's kind of similar to that, to where like, okay, what direction do you want to go, and how can we help you get there, and how can we, be most cost effective, and think about labor and how much it's going to take to like get these visions accomplished.
That's so dope. And like, I didn't even consider that like that it's so overarching too, because like, because costs are like a really big part of it. And because, you got to buy all of the stuff that you're going to make.
Right.
Like, that's so neat. What an awesome creative outlet. Like, I could see where that would be super duper appealing, because that's one of the things that I enjoy about music production so much is like, okay, well, what's the vision that you have in your head? And how are we going to move that forward? I'm working with somebody tomorrow on something like that. And it was like, it's kind of like a country song, but also like, let's make sure that it's really spacious and like kind of blending the growly and the spacious. It's kind of like, you want to go really modern with your cuisine, or you want to kind of like keep it to this?
Yep.
Like, how far, what direction do you want to take it? Because it's like you were saying when we were talking earlier, it's like, there's just so many different paths you can take. So you've got to have a really sharp, you have to have a very strong voice of your own with a lot of background to be able to like walk down that road, because it's not like Spotify. You can't just like Spotify a flavor,
Right.
like,
but also, I feel like I was saying earlier, like, know what you're good at, know what you're not good at. So I'm also not one to like take a consulting job that like I can't help them produce the best possible product for them. I would rather turn something down, humbly than take on something that I'm not going to be able to execute in a way that would make the client happy,
Yeah. I think that is a true sign of like professionalism and grace and humility, is when you can say, I'm not the right person. Because no matter how hungry you are for the job, if you're not the right person for the job, then you're just wasting everybody's time. And like, that's just not the right thing to do at all. So kudos, brother. Good job.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Good job knowing who you're not. And it's a really important part of life, is just knowing who you're not. And I feel like I think it's good that you've gotten to that at such a young age. Like, you've definitely got that old soul vibe to me when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, ever since you were a kid, it's like there was always like just depth to you about all of that. And I think that that's one of the reasons that you're kind of doing it the way you are.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Are you, I know you got a lot of people coming in from like other cities. I mean, you got people coming in to be on your staff from New York and Raleigh and Wilmington, like big cities, a lot bigger than Greenville is. So how do you think, is that kind of Beth's, do you think you have a lot of Beth's influence where you just kind of naturally pass this stuff on to people and like as you're trying to build this community there?
I definitely can't take full credit. Like there's people that are coming on that I definitely recruited, and then there's people that are coming on who have worked under me in the past, and that makes it really easy because the week or two of training before we open, at least in the back of house, isn't really going to be training.
Mm-hmm.
I've been these people's chef before, so if I say like, hey, I need 100 pounds of this braised, they're not going to ask, well, how do I braise it? What kind of rub do you want on it? Like, they're going to know, I know what Luke likes because I've worked under him before. So, like, I've brought in people like that, and that's the bulk of my crew. But then I've really relied on some of those cooks that I'm bringing on to say, okay, I know that you've been up to CIA in New York for school. Who do you know? Are they willing to move? If they are willing to move, how much money is it going to take for us to get them here? Do we need to pay a moving stipend? Do we need to pay their last month's rent there, their first month's rent here? Like having these conversations of how do we bring people here to cook? And I've really relied on the crew that I brought in to kind of like, okay, here's my circle. And now I need you guys to go into your individual circles of where you've cooked in other cities or here. But again, I'm not one to like poach from my friends in Greenville and call a bunch of employees from other restaurants in the area and poach that way. So like we're really trying to avoid that. If they come and apply, then they come and apply, and we're going to hire the best cooks we can find regardless, but we're definitely not going to go steal them. So yeah, just trying to be like ahead of this whole like labor pool thing. And I've done a good job of it, and the people that I'm leaning on have done a really good job of it too. To say, hey, I have, 2 people up in New York that want to come down, and this is kind of what they're looking for, hourly or salary wise. And then we've done a bunch of food festivals in the past. So what are my connections in Charleston? What are my connections in Greenville, South Carolina, and Atlanta? Where can I call in these favors from these connections that I've made over the years doing various festivals or whatever, and just seeing what people are willing to do. And I don't think that you really know what people are willing to do until you present a decent plan or offer. And then I think you'd be surprised how much people are willing to move around and to learn something different and to like take a chance on something like Greenville, because they know it's an emerging food city that's starting to be talked about on a national scale. So, like, you really be surprised what people are willing to do if you just have the conversation with them about it.
Well, and I think that you are communicating a very clear vision. Like you said, you have a plan. You're not just like, hey, you want to come work at my restaurant? It's a cool old building. It's like you're thinking about all of the things. Like, I feel like you just gave me like a business lesson. Like, as I'm just listening to you tell me this, it's like, oh shit, I never thought about doing all that. I've
I'll
only ever like
you later for the time it took me.
You got it. I don't even. Oh, Tanya, I accidentally booked a consulting fee I didn't mean to do.
There you go.
Oh my gosh! But no, it's super dope. Like building the whole community, and I love that you're also like allowing everybody to. That's when the magic happens when humans get together. Is when this is the little orbit here, but there's the one that interconnects, and all of a sudden, it just grows out. And I mean, that's what I love doing with music. It's why I love doing collaborations. It's why I've always loved playing in multiple bands. It's why I have this show, because I just know there's so many cool people, and there's like your friends are cool and they know cool people. It's like, well, let's all just do some cool shit together.
Right. Yeah.
That's the most fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're getting a chance to do that and really like let some people spread their wings.
Yeah, and a lot of these cooks we're bringing on are young cooks. Like I said, they're, the two from New York are fresh out of CIA culinary school and don't really have anything holding them there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my cooks went to CIA that lives here now, and that's like you were saying, one of those groups that was able to create another group and kind of network out of state. Be like, hey, we're dealing with this kind of national, shortage of labor when it comes to this industry. What are you willing to move, and what's it going to take, and how can we help you get here and have people moving specifically to Greenville to cook is a big goal of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're starting off super strong with that. Like our opening crew, 50% of them are from out of state, and so
Wow.
we're bringing people here to cook and to help grow our city and our local economy and begin to be talked about, on an even larger scale in the culinary world. So, like I said, a big goal of mine, and to answer your question, no, I definitely didn't do that alone. It took a group of
Mm-hmm.
people to find these caliber of cooks and to bring them here.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally creating opportunity, and I can just draw a parallel for that with, I mean, just the opportunity that I had to be able, I worked for Lowe's Home Improvement. Like after I left Milligan's running the bar and drinking too much and doing drugs and all that crazy shit, I was like, wow, I need to like have a time that I need to like get up in the morning and go somewhere.
Right.
And I started working for Lowe's Home Improvement. It was just such a fun job. And that was what allowed me to first move out to Western North Carolina and then move up to Chicago. And that was what got me here. And they're such a great company. I still shop there. I still love them. And like, but what you're doing is also creating those opportunities in your one location. You're creating this whole opportunity for all of these people to come in, start their new life, and whether they decide to stay with that and stay in Greenville, stay on at Native, stay on with you, or branch out. And like, that's really what happened with me. I got up here, I rocked it for a little while, and then I branched out and spread my wings. And I think that that's really dope that you're allowing people this opportunity. Like, that's a big deal, dude. Like, that's some big deal shit that you're doing. And like, I hope that every once in a while you can accept the gravity of what you're doing to positively influence your city.
Yeah, and that's like I said, a big goal of ours in building our management team and our culture, before we open. And if these people that are coming from out of state, they stay, that's great. But I'm totally cool with them moving on. That's just kind of what happens in our industry anyway. Like, I don't want to say like you learn what you need to learn and then you move on, but that's kind of what it is, and that's kind of what creates or helps create executive chefs and restaurateurs anyway. Is you can't gain experience working under the same chef for too long. I mean, you can if that chef is really well versed in many different cuisines, but like it's kind of just what we do in this industry is we move around and we learn as much as we can and soak up as much as we can. But a lot of these cooks that are coming from out of state they're gonna work for a while and they're gonna respectively move on. And as long as we're putting our stamp on these people, on their culinary careers and in their lives, and they're going to go on to open restaurants and to make a voice for themselves in the industry and grow it and keep food alive. We did exactly what we wanted to do. So it's all good whether they stay or go. We did what we wanted to.
And I think that that's just such a parallel for life, because I mean, I think that that's such a mind fuck for a lot of people, is that I know I had it with my last job because it was this really great job. There was room for growth. I thought like I had changed jobs like every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was hitting that 3-year mark, I started to like have the panic of like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be leaving. But like, also I thought that I was like supposed to stay here forever. And I'm so glad that I moved on, because like it's allowed me to grow in like completely different ways. But like those experiences are still so important. And I mean, you can draw the same parallel with having kids. Like, they're going to change, they're going to grow, they're going to move on. And that's what we should all be encouraging people to do. That was one of my favorite things as a manager, was just encouraging the I say kids that worked for me because they were a lot younger than me, but encouraging these people that worked for me to go off and do their things, whether that the one person was in customer service and wanted to go set up guitars, and now he's doing like graphic design for like band like merch.
Right.
Like that's the thing that he really wanted to do. I have one that, you know, left and moved to California, is working for like a big guitar manufacturer. And like, you have to, don't try to hold on to people. I think that's like such a shitty thing for managers to do, because obviously you don't want to lose great people. Like, it sucks to lose great people, but you want to give them wings. Like, go live your life, fly, little bird, fly.
Right. And I think there's room to like incentivize people to stay for when you know, like right now, I think, you know, no one's really pushing employees out the door. You know, there's quite a shortage in this particular industry, but yeah, you're totally right. At some point you gotta accept that you've given the knowledge that you can offer, and be proud of that, and be proud to see people move on and do, you know, to do what they want. And, you know, managers that, like you were saying, try to keep people and suck them in, you know, for too long. That's a form of micromanaging, I think. And that's just kind of coming to me. It's something I've never really thought about before. But when you said it, I'm like, you know, it's kind of a form of micromanaging, and I'm just not a fan of that at all. I hate it. So, you know, let people be good and control what they're good at, and let them do the job that you hired them to do, and reward them for that, incentivize them, give them the best quality of life that you can while doing that. Don't overwork people. You know, you need sharp brains, sharp minds, people that are hungry and eager, and that feel like you support them as a executive chef or a manager or whatever, that feel like you care about them, and you support their well-being is super important. You know?
Absolutely, dude. And I think that in, whether it's in the restaurant industry or the music industry or the retail, it's so common for that to not happen. It's got to be in every industry. And I think that that's one of the things that kind of happened in 2020, is everybody kind of recalibrated to like, what am I willing to deal with? You know, and what am I willing to put up with? And at the end of the day, the thing that's most important for me is like, I want to just be treated well. Like, I had a job that they just demanded, and for the record, it was a goddamn guitar store. That is not a 24/7 business. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Right.
As my buddy that left and moved out to California to work for that big guitar company used to say, there's no such thing as a guitar emergency. And it's like, I feel like it's got to be, unless there's a fire at the restaurant, like, there's not necessarily certain emergencies. So like, you gotta just don't burn people out, man. We are not machines. Like, it's so glorified to work hard and go hard and all of that. And it's like, yeah, like, be passionate, like, kick ass at what you're doing, go as hard as you want, but you have to understand that like, not everybody necessarily has your dream because you're the boss. So like, respecting that they have their own lives too. So I think that's a good point that you make about taking care of people. Why do you think there's such a shortage of talent in the industry? Because it seems like that baffles my mind that that's a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's this could be like a political conversation, which I don't get into. But I think that plays a little bit of it. You know, that people can make money not working, and then there's the whole argument of, you know, man, it's I don't know. The only thing I'm really going to say about it, it's such a tough question, but there's a group of people that think, you know, people cannot work and make money right now through stimulus and government money. But then I think you really got to look at our industry, like, I'm speaking on mine specifically, like we were saying earlier, you know, people are realizing like, you have to take care of people, you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to stand up for others. But to be quite honest, like, the restaurant industry working environment isn't something a lot of people can or are willing to put up with for an extended period of time. And I don't just mean the hours, I mean the inequalities, the sexual abuse, things that like we don't really talk about. We're starting to talk about, like we did earlier. But like, how about just the work environment and how we're burning people out? Maybe that's why they don't want to go to work. Maybe it's not that they're dependent on, you know, government money and they're lazy. Maybe it's that they're just tired of the way things have been done for so long. And last year they realized what they're willing to put up with, what's important to them, and they've realigned their lives. And, maybe that's it. So I think, like, without answering you, but kind of answering you,
No,
there's
yeah.
definitely two sides to the coin. But I think both of those sides of the coin play a big part in why our industry is shorted right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a very honest statement to make about, well, maybe it's because you've been abusing people's humanity for a little bit too long.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, there is an argument to be made about like the whole money side of it. I was just having a conversation with a friend about that earlier today. Because it's like, well, a lot of my friends that are in the event and music industry, it's not financially viable for them to take a job because what they were doing, they're going to be making less money. And so like, that's a tough thing because like trying to balance that, I mean, it's a real life thing where like, no, that's why we had unemployment extensions for a lot of these people, because if you were making, X amount and your unemployment's here, well, taking a job here doesn't make good sense to your life because when are you going to get back up to there, And then if you're furloughed, well, now you've lost that job and now you're just here. And not everybody wants to start over. Certainly some people have, but like, I think that you're really kind of hitting the nail on the head about it's forcing the industry to look at itself in a way that it hasn't had to. And I think that that's the best thing that's come out of this last year and a half is everyone just personally having to take a look at themselves, but then also all of these industries having to like say, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Right. And we're obviously able to adapt. And I think that's just what we have to do now with the labor pool is how do we adapt to it? How do we incentivize to change it? Because the truth is we need employees and that's not going to change, in any industry. And so we just have to evolve again. And like I said earlier, last year really proved that this industry and people in general are able to evolve and adapt very quickly. That's why so many a ton of restaurants have closed nationwide. But, in my area, North Carolina in general, we've been really fortunate. And people have been able to change what they're doing, create new revenue outlets, and get really creative in how to keep employees and how to keep their doors open. And I think this is just another time we have to do that with labor is how are we going to change it? Because we have to have it and we have to, I'm not just in a field of creating experiences and food, but like I want to create jobs and I want to create livelihood for people and I want to open as many restaurants as possible so that I can create jobs, so that I can further the culinary scene in my area. And so I can teach people something and so that I can learn from other people. You can learn from anybody. So, I definitely don't know it all or even close. And I learn something every single day and I love that. But, we just have to adapt like anything. We just have to figure out like, how are we going to get people working again? How are we going to make it beneficial to the employer and to the employee and just adapt and change and grow? Because if we're not, like, what are we doing? If we're not growing in some way all the time, that's kind of my view on it.
Dude, that is like my view on life. If you're not growing, then what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Totally agree.
Lucas, I feel like I could keep going with you for another 2 hours, and I know it's kind of late there, so I want to thank you for hanging out with me. And can you quick plug all of your stuff? Let us know like what's your current like plan for open,
Sure,
and timeline, like a rough timeline. We're not going to hold you to it.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad many people haven't held me to it because everyone's had a crazy 2020 and we just kind of put the project back on a few months ago. We held off a year, but we're trying to be open by the end of the summer, beginning of the fall this year. We'll be on Dickinson Avenue in Greenville, North Carolina. It's kind of our warehouse district. So yeah, late summer, early fall at the latest. We're going to be doing progressive takes, fine dining takes on nostalgic diner classics in a mid-century modern building. We update via my personal website, which is the lucasowens.com. Do a lot of updates on my wife's design page, which is styled by Bo for Brittany Owens, B-O. And then I do a lot on my personal page too, food footage _ Luke.Owens, which is obviously on this video. But yeah, do a lot of updates there. You can see design updates, food that I'm working on and testing in the test kitchens, and just like random life stuff of me and my family and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you letting me hang out. It was fun.
Oh my gosh, dude, I've had so much fun. It's been really great getting to reconnect with you lately.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
Well, you have a great night. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you later, buddy.
All right. See ya. Thank you.
And I'm gonna text you for your address for that Big Jones stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Oh, it's so good. All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.